Bata, the actual word bata means family. So if you think about it, this is the mother. This is the one that tells the daddy what to do, and this is the kid. This is the timekeeper for the orchestra that keeps the family together. So you have a family working, and it's an interesting point what the gentleman that was just playing the drums made because it's true. Sorry. It's true that in most African traditions, there's a bell in the orchestra. However, this is one of those exceptions. And what serves as the bell in this orchestra is this drum. And usually in ceremonies, you have people that are doing what we call clave with their hands, as opposed to having a bell in the ceremony. So to further my point, to get along, I want to talk a little bit about the language of these drums. These are drums that speak a particular language that go hand in hand with what is being spoken by the person who's the akpong, which that's what a singer is called in this religion. So the gentleman we have here is a professional akpong. My apprenticeship with him which is going to be everlasting, is based on that, the singing. I wanted to bring you some examples of some of the things that we could exemplify the tonal language by. So I want to give you an example of that. So I'm going to give you an example of how the words are emulated and simulated by the drums that is played. Tani tani chobi, eru eru male. Tani tani chobi, abata peru peru male. As you can see, the words that are being spoken are being sung on the drums. So that's not always the case, but it happens quite often. And unfortunately, through the slave trade and through just being separated from the original land, a lot of the language that is Yoruba that's spoken in Cuba today is not the Yoruba that's spoken that was spoken back in those days. So some things have been lost over the years, but for the most part, a lot has remained intact. Now, the next thing I wanna give you some examples of what it would be like playing in an actual ceremony. So we're gonna run through maybe a couple tratados, which are musical sequences, so you can get a flavoring of what this would be like.
Alaroye yogo de, alaroye yogo de.
Iba oricha bao, alaroye yogo de.
Elewa alaroye yogo de, tani elewa moyoba.
Iba oricha bao, alaroye yogo de.
Echumelege ibalaye, alaroye ibalaye.
Echubeleke ibalaye, alaroye ibalaye.
Baba echumelege ibalaye, alaroye ibalaye.
Echubeleke ibalaye, alaroye ibalaye.
Ibarago moyobara, Ibarago ago moyobara, Omodego nigosi barago, ago moyobara elegua echulona.
Ibarago moyuba, Ibarago ago moyubara, omorego nigos Ibarago ago moyubara elegua chulona.
Ibarago moyobara, Ibarago agoraroye,
couple points that I want to touch on. The tratado that we just went over, the musical sequence was for El Igual, which is typically the orisha that you always start every ceremony with, because it's El Igual is the one that stands at the crossroads, opens the pass, closes the pass. So you always have to open and close with him. Every ceremony opens with him, and every ceremony closes with him. Now, the other point that I want to mention is that the purpose of these drums, which I was kind of getting to, but I got a little straight off. These drums are used for ceremonial purposes. It's music with a purpose, you know? So it serves many purposes. The religion relies on these drums for many things and many aspects for everything, you know? People go through religious proceedings, new religious initiations, and these drums are used for those purposes. Somebody gets initiated as a santero, as a new initiate, and they have to be presented to these drums to check their head to see if what they received was the correct thing. These drums are also used to complete ceremonies of birthdays. They're also used for saluting people who have passed. They're used for a variety of different things. And I think, well, y'all want to hear some more music? Or?
Ibe ibe ma ye ye ma che ibe ibe loro ge. Ibe ibe ma ye ibe ibe loro. Ibe ibe ma ye ibe ibe loro ge. Ibe ibe ma ye ibe ibe loro. Ibe ibe ma ye ibe wa loro so. Ibe ibe ma ye ibe ibe loro. Yo mi ye ma sa.
So the other point I wanted to make, I don't know if y'all noticed, the drum that always initiates everything is this one. And that one is always responding to what this one's asking for. So that one doesn't, these drums aren't just doing whatever they want to do. They're set things. It all depends. He sings, and he has to be connected with what the singer does, you know, which is what I've been learning with him to do, singing as well. This stuff is endless. The repertoire in this stuff is countless. So you have to study this for many years. He's been doing this for 20-something years. He's been doing this for 20-something years. I've been doing this for over 10 years, and I still have like a ton of stuff to learn. You know what I mean? That's how vast the repertoire is in this. So he sings something, he has to know what goes here. He has to make the choice depending. He might sing a song, and he could sing it 3 different ways, the same song, and depending on how he sings it, he's telling him how to bring in the song. Then he brings it in, he responds, and then this one holds the time. He talks, that one responds to everything. That one doesn't do just start talking because it wants to talk. This one goes boom, that one goes beam. Y'all got me? Y'all got me? Yeah. All right. Does anybody have any questions or what's up, man?
A couple songs ago, were you all improvising toward the end when you got fast?
Absolutely not.
No improvising.
No improvisation whatsoever.
Okay.
You know, the thing is that this is a tradition where, you know, it's like you have a base that you work from, and from that base, you have to study that base first for many, many years. You know, you have to learn your verbs and your adjectives. You know, you have to learn your verbs and your adjectives here. You know, and based on that, then with one's own musicality, those verbs and adjectives elaborate, and you could put together more sophisticated phrases based on your own musical capability. You know, that's where the musicianship comes in. But this is a ceremonial thing. This isn't, a jazz solo. You know what I mean? Does that address your question?
It does. The main thing I noticed was you were doing different parts kind of back and forth, and I hadn't seen that yet.
Oh,
in this repertoire, so that was new.
Right. You seen the bata drums before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a lot, but I've
Right.
seen them, and I just never seen that drum do kind of going back and forth to different parts.
Right. Well, I mean, there's it's called like you adorn, but some of the older guys, they probably would have chewed me out.
I hear you. Okay. I know what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, is there any other questions, or what's up, man?
So, in the ceremony, you all have the bata, but would you have like Japón espiritual or check it in?
Right. I have the stuff in the car, and I was gonna do that, but because of the delay, so we're probably gonna. I was saying that because we're doing a performance over there with bata too, because these are the most like interesting drums to the ear. But I definitely brought all the stuff because we were supposed to do an hour, but because our stuff got cut, so we'll probably do it tomorrow morning. We'll probably cover some of like the other cycles besides bata tomorrow morning. Because that's a great point. Because that's uniquely Cuban. Like, what is that? Happy birthday? No, not quite. Happy birthday, Lewa or something. All the religious ceremonies. If you ever go to a ceremony, it feels like you go to a party. You know what I mean? Because it's not that kind of thing like you go to a Catholic church. It doesn't go like that. It's a little bit different. It's all a celebration. Now it depends on the celebration. You could go to a funeral. You go to somebody who's newly initiated. That's a big stepping process for somebody. Somebody celebrates their 1 year of initiation. It's like a huge deal. And these ceremonies cost a lot of money. It takes a lot. People usually rent, things out like this, and they rent out people that bring out food. It's a lot of money. It's a big thing. It's a very important step in people's lives. So it's definitely a celebration. And there's different kinds of celebrations as well. Does that address your question? Or I wouldn't say happy birthday though. There's specific songs for specific things, but the purpose of these drums is mainly for initiations, and also to call the deities, the orishas. That's the main purpose, because you want to call the deities so that they come and they speak to the people that are in the room. So that's why he's the master of that, and the person who's on here, has to know exactly where he's going, so he knows how to deal with it accordingly. Nowadays, there's a lot of people that are trying to do like what the man in the back was saying. They're trying to do jazz solos on here, and they're losing the essence of what the drumming really is. and it doesn't call the spirit the way it's supposed to be done, you know, because they're not following the protocol. They're doing whatever they want. This doesn't go like that, you know what I mean? So the purpose of this is you have people who dedicate themselves to mounting with deities, you know, and so when you play these drums, not these, the ones that are consecrated, that go through a whole ceremonial process, you have to tend to them, you have to feed them, you have to take care of them, you know, you have to do different things to them. Those drums are the ones that call the deities, you know what I mean? And they get saluted, you have to tend to them like, you know, if it was a religious deity. And those drums call deities so that the person comes, the deity comes, Elewa, or whoever it may be, or Watala, or Chun, and the deity speaks to the people who are in the room. It tells people what they may need to do, things over their life, things over their current marital situation, things at work, things that they might be in danger of. It could be a slew of things. Any other questions? Yes? That's what I'm saying. The person that mounts, that's what we consider to be the spiritual dancer, you know. So the person usually dances, and then, you know, at some point they mount, you know. And usually, you know that from early on, you know, people, you know, tend to, you know, there's people who at a very young age get mounted and possessed, you know. You had a question? Me? Well, I mean, you know, I come from a Cuban family, you know. Look, it's interesting because these drums now are worldwide. You know, this is a worldwide phenomenon. And in terms of musicians, percussionists, they all flock to this because the language in these drums is so vast and so rich. Not just this, but the whole spectrum, like the guy was saying, the cajon espiritual, and the tradition in this is so deep, the language is so vast that everybody flocks to it, you know. But the point I was getting to, this is a worldwide phenomenon now. He was born in Cuba. He comes from the root, you know. He's like, you know, collard greens, and you know, I was born in Miami, born and raised in Miami, so I'm like semi collard greens, you know. He doesn't understand that. Yeah.
I understand a little. Yeah.
And so I was born in Miami, you know, but with the influx of Cubans into Miami, with you know, my family heritage and everything, he's Venezuelan, you know what I mean? But he's been doing this since he was young, you know what I mean? And the tradition made its way to Venezuela, and he plays better than like 98% of Cubans, you know what I mean? But you know, worldwide, you have these drums in Mexico, you have in Venezuela, you have in Panama, Ecuador, you have in Europe, Spain. I even saw some Japanese people playing them the other day on YouTube. So we'll do one more thing, and then you know.
Alado eyeleo, chango eyeleo, ido ungo godo gae, sorwana gwe eyeleo bago wao. Eyeleo, ido ungo godo gae, eyeleo bago wao. Chango eyeleo, alado eyeleo, ido ungo godo gae alafi, eyeleo bago. Ayeleo, idongo godoba. Ayeleo bango wao. 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 Alaguada ni foba, orichale wao alafi. Alaguada ni foba, orichale wao. Alagala wipoba, orichale wao. Alagala wipoba, orichale wao. Alaguada ni foba, orichale wao. Alaguada ni foba, orichale wao. Alagala wipoba, orichale wao. Alagala wipoba, orichale wao. Le wao, le wao. Kakabasile wao. Le wao, le wao. Kakabasile wao. Le wao, le wao. Kakabasile wao. Kawo fumila ya dewa
and gentlemen, Ogundamasa.
A round of applause for Danny and for Juan Paulo. And thank you very much. And thank you to Amanda for making all this happen.